So what is fake Agile and why should you care? Welcome to another episode of Relearning Leadership, where we explore a specific leadership challenge and break it down to help improve your leadership, your organization, and just possibly your personal life. I'm Pete Behrens, and today I'm joined by Daniel Gagnon, an Agile Leadership Journey Guide and Disciplined Agile Fellow. That's right, today we have the Master. Welcome, Daniel.
Aw, shucks. Hello, Pete. Hello, everyone.
So humble.
Pleased to be here.
Yeah. So today, Daniel, we're going to cover kind of 4 quick little points around fake Agile. Number 1, how to spot it. Number 2, what causes it. Number 3, what to do to prevent it. And then 4th, okay, if it's already infected in a project, what can we do? So to kick it off, maybe how can we spot fake Agile in the corporate jungle, so to speak?
Well, Pete, in my experience, there are 3 key words that right away get me alarmed when I'm talking to executives, leadership, or even teams. And those 3 words are basically deploy, implement, or roll out. When I hear that, my spidey sense starts tingling because what I immediately usually find out in furthering that conversation is, yeah, we're going to roll out this Agile tool and we're going to deploy this Agile framework. And I'm not going to get into, this is not a frameworks bashing session. I'm not going to go anywhere near there. What I'm saying is those 3 words are important in context of using a framework or a tool, because it means basically, to me, it's I've started calling this, when I hear this, roll out, deploy, and implement. To me, it is the great inversion of the Agile Manifesto. Those 3 words mean that we're looking at processes and tools over people and their interactions. We're looking at contract negotiation over customer collaboration, and we're looking at following a plan over adapting to change. We've actually inverted 3 of the 4 values. In fact, those 3 words, implement, deploy, and roll out, are a flagrant contradiction to the very first sentence on the Agile Manifesto page. Now, the Agile Manifesto is a dated artifact, but it pointed us in a very good direction. So when it is that fundamentally aggressed in a corporate setting, my alarm bells go off, and I've actually walked away from more than one potentially lucrative contract because I couldn't get over those words. And when I poked what was behind those words, in a word, was fake Agile.
So the great hypocrisy, right? We take a traditional approach to so-called install Agile as a process into our organization. I often think, okay, fake Agile is kind of that Agile in name only, right? We apply concepts to things that aren't, so it's interesting. I love those 3 words, and I think those are great trigger points for any leader out there listening.
They're triggers. Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I'd like to, just on your use of the word hypocrisy, I have rarely seen it actually, be with ill intent or being hypocritical. It's just leaders are doing what they know.
Yes.
People are trying to succeed with what, the great book by Marshall, was it Goldsmith, what got you here won't get you there. Well, they're still trying to apply what got them there. So I don't think what I'm saying is it's not a question of apportioning or laying blame. It's more a question of getting to the human side, understanding and helping people realize that when they use words like that and they view it as processes and tools over people and their interactions, they're right off the bat on the wrong course.
So if that's the case in terms of, okay, fake Agile, I can spot it by seeing some of the hypocritical nature of Agile versus maybe what we're doing. What causes it? What's the source of it? What's generating some of that to occur?
Fear, I think. Fear.
Yeah, go on.
Fear of the untested, fear of the unknown. And that fear stems from the fact that we still haven't, or the organization or the leader in question has still not embraced an experimental mindset. So, working with firms where, basically the expectation is you're working on something, get it right the first time. You go to your boss and your boss says, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions. That's another classic. Instead of showing vulnerability and being open to being wrong. And what that fear really is about is, there aren't enough people modeling the vulnerability. Therefore, taking an experimental approach that could fail is viewed as career limiting. So in that case, what people do is they take, they look at the Agile Manifesto, they look at the literature, they watch YouTube, they read blogs, and so on and so on. They hire coaches and they roll out frameworks because it is a way of wrapping the fear in Linus's safety blanket. But underneath Linus's safety blanket, the fear is still there. Right? Linux from Peanuts, right? The comic strip.
Well, it's interesting you say, it's that fear of the unknown. It's the fear of the fog. It's fear of uncertainty. Like, I think one of the things I think Agile does bring about is it looks weak to say, I don't have an answer. I don't have a date. I can't tell you when. Like, I'm exploring something, but and it's interesting how you're getting at kind of a root emotional trigger. Now we got language trigger. Now you're getting into an emotional trigger. Like, there's something behind there that I'm afraid to expose.
And part of that, I mentioned the Agile Manifesto earlier as a historical artifact that is being sort of misrepresented, but I have a funny little tidbit to share with you. So, and I just put up a small post on LinkedIn about this. So as I age, I've always been an avid reader, but now I feel the urge to read the classics more and more. So I just finished Moby Dick. Okay?
Oh, wow.
And something just, I'm going to read this little quote to you and see if it rings a bell in terms of what happened to the Agile Manifesto. So it's this, towards the end of the book, Melville is talking about the self-observed rules that the whaling industry had at the time. And it was 2 simple rules. Rule number 1, a fast fish belongs to the party fast to it, meaning if you had a whale, hooked to your boat, that was yours. Rule number 2, a loose fish is fair game for anybody who can soonest catch it. So if it became untethered, somebody else could claim it, for example. But the conditions around that were not set out by the rules. So here's the part that really struck me and blew my socks off. Right after that, he says, but what plays the mischief with this masterly code is the admirable brevity of it, which necessitates a vast volume of commentaries to expound it. And that's what happened in the Agile Manifesto.
Deep. That's deep. Throw us your interpretation of that. Analyze that just briefly. Bring it up one level.
Well, just looking at Melville's wonderful language here, and there's sarcasm in there, but also empathy. What plays the mischief with this masterly code, right? So it is a masterly code. You look at this, you got 2 simple rules, all of them. It's common sense, right? That's what, go on LinkedIn and everybody's saying these days, well, Agile is common sense. We've been saying that for years. Well, is it?
It's like inspect and adapt. 2 rules.
2 rules. It's 2 rules. Inspect and adapt. But what plays the mischief with the masterly code of inspect and adapt is the admirable brevity of it.
Wow.
The brevity is admirable. It's a joy to behold something so finely sculpted and structured and perfect. Well, and what's happened? How many frameworks do we have? How many books do we have? How many conferences do we have? We have the entire Agile industrial complex, which is seeking to create the commentaries to expound it,
Which I think kind of goes into that other side of fear to change the system, right? Because there was a current system in place that has all these rules, and it's a book, right? It's a code of conduct. That's not just 2 simple rules. And any leader wanting to venture into that's a scary venture. That's like Herman Melville going out fishing.
Critical thinking and the freedom and the space to do that in your organization and not be,
So we've got the spotting, we've got some of these language triggers, and we're starting to see the cause, and that cause is kind of both emotionally, internally about dealing with change, but also that complexity of the rules of organizations and the simplicity Agile comes in with, and those just don't mix, right? The oil and water to some degree. So let's transition now maybe into that. All right, can we prevent it? What can we do? What are the steps we can take to kind of keep it back or hold it down a little bit, slow it down?
I keep bumping into things like in Agile organizations where basically the iron triangle is everywhere in disguise. And as a PMP and former practicing PM, I recognize the iron triangle when I see it. It really, it's very apparent. So we're wrapping Linus's safety blanket around the iron triangle. Um, the other thing too that I've noticed, and I'll get to the solution. I think I have one word as a solution. The other thing I just wanted to point out in my experience, and surely yours, and of many agile practitioners listening to this right now. What we also find, the type of fake agile we find, is what I call the agile galley. So the agile galley is where teams are shackled to their oars in an unceasing, never-ending spiral of iterations where they have little to no say. And half the time they haven't even been able to do something as simple as give their input on the estimates. So it is, and the iterations, the cadence of Agile is used as a drumbeat of the slave ship. I'm not even kidding. I've seen it. I've seen it that bad.
Yeah, getting
really
back to that word commitment, right? You are committed. You just do what it takes to meet this sprint goal. It's the
and
march.
There's no thank you or
march.
celebration. It's just, okay, here's the next march. So we've taken the death march of waterfall and just cut it into small slices of death.
Death by 1,000 cuts, yes.
Yeah. So I think to get to the real issue here, I think the solution boils down to a single solitary word: agency. Not empowerment. Empowerment is something that can be blithely given and blithely taken away. Once you release agency into an organization, you've released it, and you can't put the toothpaste back into the tube. And we're seeing that with the pandemic and wars and everything, and where did everybody go? Like, why can't these jobs be filled? Did the rapture happen? Like, and it's only us evil people left? That's what that's my theory now. The rapture has taken place. No. Okay. Well, the simple thing is that the pandemic drained the lake, so we can see all the rusted shopping carts, tires, and other pollution at the bottom. And people are looking at this. They always felt it when they were swimming in it. They could sometimes on a clear day see the shopping cart. But now people are going, you know what? We have to redefine the social contract around work. Employee engagement, to my mind, was an oxymoron way before 2020. And I've spoken about this. There's no such thing. People need skin in the game. People need intrinsic motivation. What Daniel Pink, touched upon part of it with mastery, autonomy, and purpose. But I think he left behind, or agency is sort of implied, but you can't allow agency to be implied. It has to be there. And that means giving people skin in the game. And, no one, there was no rapture. People just realized that, throwing away their lives at jobs where they had absolutely no say, they had to commute to, it gave society a reflective pause. And when the restrictions of COVID receded, they took the waters from that lake away, and people are going, no way am I diving into those rusty shopping carts again. And no amount of trinkets and baubles thrown at people in the name of retention is going to work. That's Band-Aid on a gaping wound.
I love how you use that language, agency, and I think that is one of those words that's coming to the forefront. And I think COVID, certainly, as you said, was a lake draining event that I think people started to recognize the agency they're missing. So I appreciate you bringing that back forward for us. So let's touch on the last piece. Okay, fake Agile is already there, right? It's infected in our organization in some way. What are the kind of the next steps, like to start to what's the vaccine, or what's the treatment that we can apply, I guess, in this case?
I think there are two major things. The first is, survey your employees in a non-threatening way and get the real feeling. No matter how you go about it, get their real feeling and make an honest attempt at true empathy where people have the safety to tell you how they feel. And if you are mired, if you are on an Agile galley, you will eventually know. And I'm only talking about employee surveys in order to gather data, because an Agile galley, you can feel and smell it when you first set foot on the gangplank. Believe me, and I'm sure you've seen that as well. So if it's obvious for everyone to see, smell, and hear, then we need the courage, the organizational courage. If you want to survive and thrive, then you have to unshackle people from their oars, is the first thing.
Yeah.
The second thing, to my mind, is that, again, make it data-driven, because that's the only non-fearful thing that you can use with leadership that is not yet convinced or is in that fear zone. Gather the data necessary to demonstrate that we're not actually, I love the title of Jonathan Smart's book, Better, Sooner, Safer, Happier, right? We're not actually that much better. It's not actually that much sooner. It's certainly not safer because everyone's silent, and it's far from happier. Look at the turnover. Data, I think is the only way. I talk a lot about things like I talk a lot about the touchy-feely human side, but if leadership is ensconced in old ways, then you have to meet them where they are. Yeah. And that's with data.
Well, and I think what agency itself is I like the way you said that. That's the answer. Right? It's like you've got to allow employees to help dig the organization itself out, right? Give them some shovels, give them some agency on the process, give them some agency on the structure,
absolutely.
Give them some agency on the metrics. Don't just give them agency on the things that they're working on. Let them design their system or co-design their system. That's agency too. And I think there's so much empowerment and ownership that comes when I can be responsible for my own system of rules and policies. Yeah. Yeah. Well, Daniel, I want to say thank you. One of the things I'm feeling with Fake Agile right now is a sense that it's not something that usually happens overnight, right? This is something that likely just builds and builds.
It starts from deployment.
Yeah.
And then it gets worse.
Yeah. And so the solution is probably not also going to happen overnight, right? This is going to take repeated, it's like fitness or health, right? It's going to take ongoing investment, month after month, quarter after quarter, year after year to really start to rid some of these different aspects out. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. It's just like, to use a sort of, very depressing metaphor. It's not because you've opened the cage that people are going to come out immediately, right? They're still going to be looking at each other. Is that really open? If I go out and they're going to lock it behind me, I'll be the only one out there. Yeah.
Depressing metaphors. That's the great way to end this podcast. Open the door to the cage and see what the employees do. Everybody's afraid to walk out.
Who's afraid to walk out? Yeah.
I love it.
Do they feel safe to even walk out? Right?
Well, anybody listening out there, watching out there, I encourage you to critically evaluate, look at your organization. As Daniel said, do some data points, gather some data. And start to think about and get them involved in whatever those next steps are to help start to stomp this out. So just want to say thank you for listening and joining us today, and enjoy the journey.
Thanks for having me, Pete. And folks, yes, enjoy the journey.